Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's training on Microsoft Teams. I'm Sarah Galinsky with Common Knowledge Technology. We decided to put together this webinar after a great response from the first one we did. We kept it kind of quick and simple, and we thought it was time to get a little bit more deeper into Teams and some more of the features and functions. Last week, Peter told me I should start with a joke. I'm terrible with jokes, but I'm going to pretend you guys are all going to laugh at me. But one of my favorite memes has been, I feel like I'm 16 again. Gas is cheap and I'm grounded. So stuck in this house for a couple weeks. Looking forward to speaking with some people today. And without further ado, here's Peter Horwich with Common Knowledge Technology.
Hey, that was a good joke. It's totally true. Thanks everybody for joining. In case this is your first webinar, which is probably not, because this is sort of part two. But I am Peter Horwich. I own Common Knowledge Technology, and we focus on primarily serving small and medium-sized businesses. And today we're doing more about Teams, since a lot of people want to know about that. And we're going to be using my live Teams account, which I forewarned you last time that is always a little bit dangerous because there's people sending me stuff all the time. But I think it helps for you to see a real environment going on. So we'll do that. I have a list of things that I want to show you, and then I have some pre-submitted questions. So thanks for those of you who did that. We'll be sure to get to those. If you have any additional questions, please put it into the Q&A and we'll get to as many as possible. I think I left a decent amount of time at the end for questions as well. So without further ado, we can jump in and get started here. So let me switch over to the Teams application. There we go. Sarah, you can see it and you can hear me and all that stuff. All right. So the first thing that I wanted to kind of show you with some advanced features is how to pin a channel. We talked about getting the teams out of the hidden teams and into your teams, which is kind of the favorites section. But they added the ability to group all your channels at the top. And so if I wanted to take in this tester group, if I wanted to take the general channel and go to the more options 3 dots button there and pin it, if I click on pin, it'll bring a copy of the channel up to the top. So I have a quick reference section in and around pinned. And you can group all the various channels from within different teams. And the other day we did a fun pick contest here where we all had to go outside and take a selfie, and the best selfie won. But anyway, you can ping me offline for more details on that. But if I wanted to pin this channel also, I'd just do the same process. And now I'm sort of building a group of my favorite channels, regardless of what team they are on, up at the top in this pinned section. And to undo that is equally the same easy process. Just unpin it, unpin it. But again, if you're on a lot of different teams and you have a lot of different channels that you pay attention to, you can group those at the top like that, and it's pretty convenient. So that was an easy one. We're going to go into some advanced file sharing now. So I'm going to go back to my test team and my general channel. I'm going to go into the file section. And you'll notice that I have a folder in here. So we didn't get into this last time, but this does support folder structures. And even if I click on this folder, I put another folder inside that one. And so you'll see that it supports nested folders, much like Windows and all the file structure that you have today. So just wanted to point that out, that you're not limited to just that main section. You can group all this stuff in folders, and then you'll see the folder structure right here, which is sort of in a fairly normal format. So if I wanted to flip back to just the main files page, I can do it from right there. And to make folders is just simply click on new, click on folder, and then you have a new folder, and you can drag and drop stuff in there, or move it rather. You got to move it this way, I guess. And then I'll move it to stuff in a folder. And if I go into that folder, now I have moved that phone list into that folder. So pretty easy there. You'll notice up here, there's a button here called Open in SharePoint. And I mentioned this last time, but Teams is really more of an interface into some existing Microsoft products. And one of them is SharePoint. This makes SharePoint very easy to use. And it has a very easy interface to it because SharePoint can be quite complicated depending on what you're doing with it. But there are some advanced features with handling files that are only available in the SharePoint interface. So we're going to go open this up into SharePoint. Again, it's just another way of viewing the same files in this channel, but just with a SharePoint on the SharePoint backend. So I'm going to click that. And I'm going to have to switch over my screen share to my web browser. Which is there. So now I am in the SharePoint version of the same information and in the same place. You'll see that I'm still in this test team here and I'm in the general channel and I'm obviously in the file section. And so if I wanted to see, one of the things that is supported on the back end is versioning of the file. And so every time that you save a new version of the file, it saves all the previous versions for you. And the only way to get to that versioning currently is to go into the SharePoint backend. And you simply go to the more, it has, I don't know why the dots are in a different direction than this one, but you can click on the more dots for more options. And now you have a version history option on this file. And if you click it, you will see, sometimes it takes a minute, each version of the file, and this one only has one version, but if I had 50 or even 100 versions of here, they would all be listed down here and who modified them. And then if you needed to revert to a previous version of the file, you could do that. And that's super helpful in collaboration and meetings and so forth. The phone list, let's see if the phone list had multiple versions on it, so I could show you. May not. It does not. But trust me, the versioning will all be there, and that is how you get to it. One other thing that you can do in the SharePoint view of the files instead of being inside of Teams is that when you're trying to upload, you can only upload files. I mean, you can select multiple files, but it's at a file level when you're uploading new files into Teams. If you wanted to upload entire folders, that option under upload is available only in the SharePoint version. So you can upload entire folders, so you don't have to click on the individual files to get those uploaded into SharePoint and then Teams. And of course, anything you upload in here will automatically show up in the Teams version. You are looking at the same information. It's only stored in one spot. There's only one copy of the information. This is just two different views of the same thing. And you'll notice over here also there's a flow. This is Flow and Power Apps, and some of the application stuff is all kind of in a state of flux right now because they're doing lots of updates and upgrades in and around these capabilities. But one of the things I wanted to show you with Flow is that if I create a flow, a flow is a bunch of, it's basically data going from one point to another. It's flowing from one point to another. And so one of the things that we can do with Flow here, oops, bring that back, is that we can set up things that happen with data flows. And I wanted to just show you some examples of that. So this will let you post a message in Teams. It'll copy files between OneDrive and SharePoint. Save email attachments to a SharePoint document library. That's a popular one. Automatically do that, and that can be a SharePoint that's connected to a team like we are here, and so it'll automatically show up in Teams. But these are things like there's hundreds and hundreds of templates in here. I'm going to go to the more templates. And so you don't necessarily have to recreate something from scratch, but you can get things to automatically move from one place to another, and you can monitor things also. So they used to have one in here, like you could monitor a Twitter feed for any time anything got popped into a Twitter feed from like a customer or something. You could automatically put that into a team, and then the team would notify that there's been a Twitter thing that needs to be responded to. It's not just Microsoft. Here's one right here, save tweets that include a specific hashtag to a SharePoint list. And so you can move and notify and get lots of things in here. There's literally hundreds of templates in here. Some more popular than the others, but that's something to play with. That's a deep rabbit hole to go down and use some of these Power Automate. Power Automate is the new name for Flow that they had before. So you'll see it, they haven't quite fully switched over to the terminology Power Automate, so you'll still see it in both terminologies. So that is something that you can add on as well. So I am going to go back to my Teams application here. Teams, there we go. Gotta move some stuff around here. Okay, and lastly, for now in the file section, there's this ability under the more and the more to check out a file. And so you can check it out and check it back in, and that keeps some organization around today when you may not be able to do everything with a large file online because the residential internet is sometimes not the best and trying to work from home. And so in order to do that, you can download the whole file and check it out and then check it in so nobody's making changes to it while you've got that offline copy. And I haven't played around with that a lot. It's a relatively new feature. I would encourage you to look up the additional help with that, or we could dig into it for you offline if you needed to use that feature. Let's talk a little bit about security settings. So did we have a question that popped up? I think it went away.
Peter, we had a question about syncing. So what does sync do in either Teams or SharePoint?
Yeah, it does the same thing. If you click on sync, you'll need to download the OneDrive sync tool. And so ironically, Microsoft naming conventions aren't always totally obvious. So the OneDrive sync tool will sync both OneDrive, and it will sync Teams files, and it will sync SharePoint files. And all of those sync functionalities are in the OneDrive sync tool. You will not find a Teams sync tool. It is only called the OneDrive sync tool. And so if you click on sync, it'll call that tool out. And right here it says, well, you may need to get the latest version of the Microsoft OneDrive tool. So if you don't have it installed, it'll give you the option to click that link right now and do that. And then this keeps basically an offline copy of everything on your local machine that is in that channel. And you can set it up to do only certain teams and only certain channels and so forth, but that allows you to have an offline copy. And typically, before we were all stuck at home, that would be good for somebody who was traveling that wanted to work on something on a laptop, on a plane, or something that they may not have online access to. So that is what.
Peter, there's a little bit of a follow-up question too. what's the difference between OneDrive and SharePoint?
So I went into this a little bit last time. OneDrive is really more of a place for you to keep your work in progress and your personal work related stuff. That's not associated with the team and it's not associated with anything else in your department. It's sort of your area to keep stuff. And previously, when everything was on more of a traditional server, you usually had a U drive, which was your user drive, which you had stuff in, and then the P drive was the public drive. And so Teams and SharePoint would be more of the public drive, where you're using information from at a department level or a company level, or even a team level, as it would be inside your department. And then the OneDrive area is usually more for just your stuff that you're working on yourself. So good questions. So I'm going to go into a little bit of security settings right now. So you can control who can post inside of a team. So if you go on the team level, if you go into manage the team, and of course you have to be an owner on the team in order to manage the team at this level. And so again, if you're an owner and you want other people to be able to also control these settings, you can go in and see who else is a member and or a guest, and you can change their role into an ownership role, and then they'll be able to make these types of changes too. But if you go over into the settings section, there's all kinds of stuff in here about setting what members can do, what guests can do, and what they cannot do. And so if you need to be a little more restrictive, and especially if you're in a larger organization and you have a team consisting of everybody, you might not want them to be able to post, for example, to an all company team or a channel. You might want only the marketing department or the HR department or something along those lines to be able to post in there. And then everybody else can read it, but they can't necessarily post it. And you can control all this stuff inside the team settings right here. I'm going to go a little bit deeper into this. There's a lot of settings in here, and I'm actually going to show you the administration side. And so most of you on the call are not going to be able to get into this area because it requires your Office 365 administration level. But I just wanted to show you what kind of things that you can turn on and turn off in here, because there's quite a few. And so I'm just going to give you a glimpse of that. And then for most of you, we would be the ones that would be going in there and on an admin level, turning these on and off for you. Because you don't want to go in there and screw something up, basically, which is really easy to do. But let me give you a look at some of this stuff. And so I'm going to switch over to my browser once again. And as an aside, I have this screen up. I downloaded the application Crisp, which we've been starting to use in our company and recommending to clients. We set up this URL if you wanted to download it. And the free version is great. Right now they're offering a pro version for free for 14 days. It's crisp.ckt.solutions. That'll give us a little something on the back end, and you'll pay the same as everybody else. To be transparent, and that'll help us do more webinars like this. But that will filter out background noise and so forth. And then so I sort of have my, since we're at home today, and because of the snow and so forth, I just decided to stay home. Got the birds chirping in the background and so forth. And so hopefully it's filtering that out, and you can check that out at your leisure. But back to the security settings, I've already logged into the Teams Administration Center inside of the Office 365 console. And so I wanted to show you a few things in and around this. And so when we are in meetings, there's a whole bunch of policies and settings in here that you can put in and around the meetings that you have available for Teams. Whether you can restrict certain types of people and licensing from coming in. Inside the meeting settings, there is all kinds of stuff in here. And so there's some quality information in here about how you can do the video and the screen sharing and so forth. And then really this is important too, is whether an anonymous user can join a meeting or something. And so you can, again, these are just types of settings in here. So if you want to be like, okay, I wanted to use Teams, but I really don't want anybody to get into these meetings. It's more of an internal thing. We can set those settings. Same down at the Teams level, if I'm managing what types of applications. And so this came up on our call last time, is that somebody asked me if they could do an application, and I was searching around for the application. I couldn't find it, and I knew it used to be there. But the problem was that it is now set in our teams not to allow all these applications to be available to everybody. And so this is the actual list of all the applications that could be available. And so I believe the individual user at the time was talking about Trello. And so if I go all the way down this list, Trello is on here, but you'll notice it's not allowed. It's disabled in my organization. And so if I wanted to obviously link Trello into my Teams and have that available, all I'd have to do is turn it on. So it's not showing as an option to everybody in my Teams environment because it's not turned on at this organizational level. And then same with guest access. And so I am looking for the guest access, org-wide settings, here we go. And so whether anybody can externally access, so you can turn the ability to make all of these links and so forth to turn off so people can't send external links outside the organization and so forth. And whether you're allowing guest access or not would be turned on and off right here at the top. And then once it's turned on, you can be much more granular about what guests are allowed to do and what guests aren't allowed to do. And so I couldn't show you last time how to add a guest to a meeting because we had this turned off by default, and it is turned off by default. And so if you want to allow guest access, we will probably have to go in and turn that on for you. And then going into team settings too, there's all these things in there about can they access Dropbox, can they access Google, can they do all of these other things in here. And so just know that there's tons of security settings in here about, so if you don't want your employees to do certain things, we may be able to turn it on and off. You just have to ask us to get into this special admin section of Office 365 under your administrator ID for Office 365, and we'll help you out with that. All right, so I talked about adding guest access to a team, and so now that I've got that turned on for our organization for the time being, I'm going to go back to Teams and just show you that really quick. And it is super easy once it's turned on, because you go back to the team level and you go back to manage team, which is actually where we are right here already, except we're on this members tab. Now that I have guest access turned on the admin level for the entire organization, when I go to add a member and I go start typing, so an email address, it will say, hey, this looks like you want to add a guest. Do you want to add a guest? So you just click on it, and then that will be a member of the team, and it will send that person an email at that address saying that they've invited you to a team. And then they will be able to, based on your organizational settings for guest access, they may be able to be a full member of the team or a restricted member of the team, however you have that set. A few notes about notifications also. So on the channel level, if you go to more options, and you go to channel notifications, you can set it to notify you in different ways on when something happens to this particular channel. If you want it to show in the feed, or if you want to pop up a notification, and so forth. So there's a few settings in and around the channel, but most of them are set at the general level. And sorry, looking at my notes for a little bit. Yep, so most of the notifications are in the main settings area, which is under your initials, so your account settings. And then if you go into settings and go to notifications, I think I had showed this briefly last time, but I wanted to go in and show you one important thing. On the others, in the missed activities email, you can set this. And so basically what it does is if you're not logged into Teams and somebody sends you a message, eventually, if you haven't been in Teams for whatever period of time, it'll send you an email that says, hey, I think somebody's trying to get a hold of you. Here's what the message they sent to you, which is super helpful when I'm out and about. And sometimes my cell phone, even though I've downloaded the mobile version of Teams on my cell phone, sometimes it shuts it down for whatever reason to save power. And so I'll catch this email saying, hey, somebody's trying to get a hold of me, and I didn't see it on Teams. And so I've got that set for once every hour. And so you can set it for a couple different settings in here. But again, any of the notifications in here is a good way to, if it is being too annoying, you can back it down, or if you want more information about when somebody has sent a message or is trying to get a hold of you through Teams, you can set all these settings in here. So when you have been invited in as a guest into another organization, one of the things you can do is you can flip which organization you're in. They call that your tenant in Office 365. So each company has its own tenant, is the way that they refer to that. And so if you want to switch between those to participate in the team that you're a guest of, one of the easiest ways to do that is to come up and next to your initials with your account information, you'll see which organization you're currently showing. And so if you've been invited to a team with another organization, it will end up populating this menu when you click this down arrow right here. And so you can see I'm guests of several different organizations, most of which are clients. But I'm going to go into this particular one, which is hosted by one of our peer groups. And so here I've got a whole set of teams, and they have a lot of other teams that I'm not a part of, so I can't see them. But you'll see that I am in the Ingram Micro TrustX group here. And I have permissions as a guest in this case to do a bunch of different things in here, attend meetings and so forth, and access files. I can participate in what I need to do in here, and then I can go back up to this menu, and I go back to the CKT tenant, which is my main one, and bam, I'm back inside my organization. And so it's like literally going into somebody else's organization and then flipping back into my organization as if I literally did like a site thing for them. So that is how you participate as a guest rather than just inviting a guest. We can probably stop for questions for a minute.
Yeah, Peter, we had one question back on the notifications. Is there a way to set these on by default? Or is that like a user setting or what? Specifically, they're looking for like all new posts.
Yeah, the defaults are the defaults. I don't believe that you can change them as far as what it is when you initially get into Teams. But yeah, I don't think there is an overall one that you can do. They're kind of separated out into different areas, but most of what you're going to be concerned about usually under Teams is chat messages, and that one is right there. So hopefully that was a good answer to that question. I'm not sure.
I think from my standpoint, one of my best practices has been to make sure I use the at and then somebody's name if I really want to make sure they see that message, because that's what's going to alert them. So that's just kind of become one of my habits.
Yep, and that is called a mention, and you'll see in the conversation down here, Sarah's talking about if you type at to mention somebody, and so I think I demoed this last time. If I type an at symbol, it will give me everybody that is currently on this team as an option, or if you start typing, it will filter it, and then you just select them, and then that way it'll give them additional notification that somebody's trying to reach them when you mention them specifically. All right, so I'm going to,
sorry,
was there one more?
Peter, we just got another question pop in. Let's get to it really quick. It says management of Teams and SharePoint seems like it could be a full-time job. Are most of our clients moving in that direction?
Yeah, we do have a ton of clients moving in that direction, and actually, so the ones that were already well into the process and have been using it for probably more than a year or so, they found going to this remote work environment really easy because everything's already in the cloud. A lot of people are getting rid of their servers and going to this instead, so they lose the maintenance need of the server in its entirety. And usually once this is sort of set and settled, it is a process to get it up and running and making sure, you know, you don't have too many teams and things aren't confusing, and setting organizational norms around how to use Teams and what your policies are going to be and so forth. But once that's set over the first sort of usually 3 months, I would say most of it is set. And then after 6 months or so of a few little extra tweaks here and there, we don't really see people going in and continuously changing settings in here. It's just kind of, once you get it dialed in, it sort of is pretty good to go. All right, let's talk a little bit more about apps and so forth. And so we talked about some of the apps aren't necessarily turned on, but I did want to highlight a few apps that you may find useful. And so if you go into apps, oops, this is not where I wanted to go. Let's try one over here. So if we add a tab here in one of these apps, so Flow is here. You'll see that you can add in Flow into a team from here as well. You don't necessarily have to go into the SharePoint. But I did want to note that you could put forms. So Microsoft Forms is, a lot of people end up using Google Forms for stuff because it's quick and easy and you can make a fillable form and so forth. And they didn't know that that was also now available from Microsoft, and has been for quite some time. And so if you want to make a form, you can do it from right here. So you can add in a form into here, and it'll start asking you to name your form. So I'm going to have my PNC form. A little bit slow today, but then you can put in a simple form about questions and responses and so forth, and have somebody fill it out and associate it with that with a channel. And you can also download that form and use it in different ways and so forth. And you can put a flow behind a form, so it could dump the responses for you directly into an Excel file that is in Teams. So that is one way to do one of the more built-in applications that Microsoft has. And if I go back and look at that same thing again, I am going to see Planner. This is Project Management Lite, which is really useful for a lot of people. And so I can put a planner app or a document right into the tabs here. So I'm going to go, this is our project schedule, which is really handy if you have a channel dedicated to a specific project. You can put a little project plan together right inside here, and it'll do the typical, what's your tasks, what's the due date, who's it's assigned to, how does the schedule play out in sort of a simple Gantt chart. So that is really handy as well. And then there was one more, oh yeah, here it is. So in the more section over here, we have shifts, and not everybody has shifts depending on your license, your Microsoft Office 365 license, but shifts is a pretty convenient to add into a specific channel or team, in that it basically allows you to schedule a bunch of people for shift work. And so if you have field people or you're trying to, whatever your shift situation is, that's really easy to integrate it in right into Teams here. It has a fairly straightforward application around shifts available as well. So that's some of the other things that are available. Let me go back into my Teams view here. And then connectors, there's a couple places in here that you can do connectors. And one of them is at the channel level here. If I go to my more section, there's a connector available. And this is where the lines start to blur around which apps are available, whether you're using Flow or you're using Power Automate or all of these stuff. This gets into a little bit blurry situation, but you can link an application and it will only show you the applications, I believe, that are on that list that we were looking at, whether you've allowed those applications into your Teams organization, but you can basically hook one of those right into a channel. And so that's some advanced stuff that we may have to help you on an individual basis, and your situation may call for specific things that don't apply to others. So I just wanted to show you where those type of things are at. One reminder also in the meetings, when you're doing the calendar and you do a new meeting, when you're setting up a team meeting, or you're sending out those invites, you can add a real landline phone number that people can call into the meeting with. We just have to add that in as a license. And if you wanted to use Teams as your full-blown phone system, you can assign real phone numbers to that and use this as your phone system with your headset and so forth. So you would not need your desk phone anymore. You'd be on a totally virtual phone system, and it's all integrated in here with Teams. So I'm going to pop over to some of the pre-submitted questions right now as we're closing in on our time together. So the first question was, we're using Teams for a timed RFP panel presentation next week. Somebody told me that no more than 4 people can be on the screen at once. Is that true? That is true. Microsoft just announced that they're starting to roll out an increase of that from 4 people to 9 people, which will help a lot. You can see the rest of the participants in the meeting, and it will rotate as to who's talking. So every time a new person talks, one of the 4 people that I'm currently talking, their video will be replaced with the person who's talking. And so you're looking at the active people that are talking all the time, but you can only see 4 people at once currently. Also, is there a way to keep a running time clock that all the participants can see? Sort of. I'm going to start a Teams meeting here inside the channel. I'm going to go for an instant meeting inside the channel here. So I'm going to click this Meet Now button. You're going to see my video inside the video once I start this meeting. And so I'm actually in a meeting right now that I just popped open. And so right here in the control panel of whether your video's on and whether you're muted and all that kind of stuff, there is a meeting clock that continues to run. And so that's about the closest thing that you're going to get. So it starts from the time that you start the meeting, obviously, but certainly if you are in sort of a formal situation and you've allowed, 1 minute responses from people, you can sort of keep track of that, at least from there, fairly easily. All right, next question I have is there functionality for messaging between some people on the call, but not for all to see? I probably shouldn't have closed that meeting quite yet, but I don't believe so, not to my knowledge. That is not something that currently exists for Teams. Anybody in the meeting, I guess I'll fire up that meeting again. I'll meet now. So we're inside a meeting again, and I'm gonna click the show conversation button. And so there is a meeting chat in here that you can do, and it will record the chat also along with the meeting, but there is no private chat available that I'm aware of right now. Everybody in the meeting can see the entire chat that is going on as far as I know. Recommendations for call clarity and picture quality. One of the reasons that Teams is currently limited to 4 video feeds at a time that you're seeing is that the video by default is actually very high quality. And so I wouldn't necessarily worry about that. It sort of auto adjusts as best as it can. But as far as if you're worried about the quality of it, as far as on my end, it is already defaulted to a very high quality on Teams. All right, I left 2 minutes for more questions. Do we have any more questions?
We don't have any questions at this time.
All right, I scared everybody that I got so far into the weeds on some of this stuff, but continue to have, we have,
yep,
see, I knew somebody would have a question.
We've had a few people say that their staff members have noticed their laptop fan seems to run hot when using Teams. I think that might be just general in video, because mine does that with Zoom or GoToMeeting or any of the other ones I've been on. But not Zoom, so that's funny. See, I've had it happen to me on Zoom.
That goes back to if you're on video with Teams, it is probably running at a higher quality by default than is on Zoom, and so it is taxing the graphics card of the laptop a little bit more than Zoom would.
Would you recommend just closing unneeded apps or anything like that? Is there anything you can do?
I think it'll still run hot.
Yeah.
So you're using a lot of CPU power on a laptop with the graphics running video feeds, and so anytime you're running a video feed, it's probably going to do that. So, all right, one last chance for questions. Pretty much finished right on time here. So, while I give everybody a chance to ask a last question, I'll just throw out a big thank you. We had a really good turnout today, and I hope this was useful. Again, we always appreciate feedback about how we did and how useful this was for you, and what you liked about it and what you didn't like about it. And so we will continue to try to bring you more content that is useful and applicable to your situation today, as we're all kind of working from home and looking more at how to use these tools and how to roll them out. Again, depending on which kind of plan you're on, we may be able to include it in your plan, do some personalized training for your organization. And even if it's not included in your plan, we could arrange to do that on a per fee basis. But we'll continue to provide what we can in these formats for free for the time being. And again, thank you very much for attending. We have anybody sneak in the last question there? All right, well, I'll return you to your day, your snowy day if you're here in Colorado. So thanks again, and have a great afternoon.
Thank you.